Hi, this is Steve with HomeStrung Jewelry, and today I'm going to show you how to take just a couple of lengths of wire and a few crystals and turn them into a unique and fun pair of earrings. To make these earrings, first off, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need some tools. You're going to need a ruler. You're going to need various pliers such as round nose, some flush cutters, chain nose, maybe some flat nose. You're also going to need some mandrels, and you can use bead store mandrels, or today I've just got a bamboo skewer, a stick pen, and a knitting needle. Materials that you're going to need, you really only need some 22 gauge wire and some 20 gauge wire, and then you're going to need some beads, 6mm beads. Today I'm going to be using some beads that are coming from our upcoming Gemstone Orphanage November subscription box, but you can use any 6mm beads which you'd like. Now let's first start by talking about some wire. As I said, you're going to need 22 gauge and 20 gauge wire, and you can use just about any wire that you'd like. Some of it could be half hard or dead soft. Dead soft's going to be a little easier to work with, and for the 22 gauge I would recommend that. For the 20 gauge, you can go with anything from dead soft to half hard. We've got some German silver here, and I've got some copper wire, but just for the fun of it, I thought we'd do something a little bit different and use some craft wire today. This is pearl wire, and I've got both 22 gauge and 20 gauge because, sometimes you just like to do something in a different color, and you don't always have the findings and things which you need. So today I'm going to show you how to make the earrings using just an enamel covered wire. Now, as I said, we're going to need 6mm beads, and almost everybody has some 6mm beads hanging around, and these are beads from some of our recent Gemstone Orphanage subscription boxes. This one from the Blue Moon box, and this one from the September Dendritic Agate box. We're going to be pulling some 6mm abacus crystals. This is a preview from the November Gemstone Orphanage box. I thought these might be fun to use. You're going to need 10 of these. Now, to begin with, we're going to need a couple of ear wires. And as I said before, we want our ear wires in black. And so I'm going to need a couple of lengths of this 20 gauge wire. And I'm going to need 1 3/4 inches, which is about 45 millimeters of the wire, which I'm going to cut using my flush cutter. First off, I'm going to trim off the non-flush end. Up at one end. Then we're going to measure 1 3/4 inches. Make sure the flush side is going in towards the wire. And then I'm going to use this same wire. First we'll cut the end flush again, because we don't want that sharp edge. And we'll just take the wire, use the one wire to measure the other. And there you got your 2 wires to make your French wire earrings. Now, I could use a 9 or a 10mm mandrel, but for this I'm going to use just a standard stick pen. This came from some doctor's office, and what I'm going to do is just take this and wrap it around the pen so that the 2 ends of the wire come together. Just bring them up so they touch. They'll spring back just a little bit. Then I'm going to take my round nose pliers, take one end, and I'm just going to make a loop, an outside loop. Bring it on the outside of the wire and bring it over until it touches. And with the chain nose pliers, I'm going to grab the other end of the wire about 1/4 inch from the end, and we're just going to bend it out a tiny bit, just so it looks like an ear wire. We're going to do the same thing with the other one. Next, we're going to need some jump rings. Again, you probably don't have black jump rings just sitting around, and so we're going to take a length another length of the 20 gauge wire. And here it's going to depend on what size jump rings you want. Okay, this earring right here was made with 3mm jump rings. This one here was done with slightly bigger. These are 5mm. You can see they just hang a little bit different. This one hangs a little longer. This one's a little more bunchy. For today's project, I think I'm going to go with the smaller ones, and I'm going to use a mandrel. Again, I could use a standard mandrel, but what I've got is I've got a knitting needle, which is just slightly under 5mm, and then I've got just a standard bamboo skewer, which is around 3mm. And that's the size we're going to use here. Now, depending on the size of the jump rings, you're going to need anywhere from about 5 inches to maybe 10 inches of your wire, because we're just doing the small ones. 6 inches is going to be just fine. I'm going to take the bamboo skewer, and we're just going to start coiling the wire around the skewer. Keep your coils together a little bit. You want to wrap till you've got at least 10 coils. And I hate to waste the ends. So there we go. And we're just going to slide that off of the skewer. And now we're going to take our flush cutters. Now everybody knows that there's a flush side to the cutter, and then the non-flush side. This side will cut the wires nice and flat. The other side, it'll be kind of peaked. It'll be sharp. You don't want that. So I'm going to take my coil. I'm going to pull it apart just a little bit. Tiny amounts so that there's some space in between the coils. Then I'm going to start with the flush side, cutting to the in towards the ring, and we'll make our first cut. Then what we're going to do is flip the cutters over, and right here we're going to go to the next coil, cutting it just right about at the same place. So there's our first jump ring. So flip it back over, cut that little nub off, flip your pliers around so that we make sure that the ends of the jump ring are flat. Whoops. Right there on the end. And we're going to do this for a total of 10 rings. Make sure you flip it over for the flat side each time and remove that little sharp piece. And then go on and keep cutting. Okay, so we have our ear wires, we have our jump rings, and I like to have the jump rings all set to immediately be used. And for this, so we need to open and close them and make sure that the ends come together. And for this, you can use flat nose and a chain nose plier. And if you're curious about how this works, I have a little video that tells how to open and close jump rings. But what you're going to do is just wiggle a little bit, pushing in till the ends touch like that. And then I'm going to open it just enough so that we can use these to link together. And I usually open the side with my dominant hand, so that it's up. Just makes it easier to thread. You can do the same thing with two flat nose pliers. which is how I prefer to do it. Again, you just wiggle them a little bit until, whoops, sorry, enameled wire is kind of slippery and it tends to slide apart, but you can feel it touch and then just open it a little bit and drop it down. You technically can do it with your round nose pliers if you don't have anything else. Or you just grab it this way and then wiggle a little bit till it touches and then open it. You'll do that with all 10 of the jump rings. Okay, we have our jump rings, we have our ear wires. Now we need a way to fasten our beads onto our earrings. And for this, we're going to use our 22 gauge wire. And we're going to make some head pins. We're going to do some little coiled head pins. Now you can use anything from 2 inches to 3 inches of wire for each one of the head pins. I like to have lots of room to hold on to the wire. And so I'm going to go closer to the 3-inch mark. And again, we only have to measure the first one, and I'm going to flush cut this one end of the wire on each one. And again, once you've got one cut, then you can just go in and begin cutting the others. So you're going to need 10 of these wires, 10 times 3 inches. That's going to be a total of 30 inches. For each one of the head pins, you're going to take your wire, your round nose pliers, and just using the very tip of the round nose pliers and grabbing onto the flush cut end, we're just going to make a little loop. And just bring that loop around until it just about barely touches the wire. And hold on to it nice and tight because this enameled wire gets slippery. And we're going to make a little open spiral. Just use your fingers, twist your hands, and we want to go around until we've got about 2 wires deep on it. You can adjust it a little bit if you need to. I want a little more space or a little less space over there on the side. You take that first one, then you take your chain nose pliers and you grab the loop right there where you finished, and you're just going to make a bend. You're going to lollipop it, and I'll even bring it in a little bit just to round it up. You're going to do the same thing with the rest of your wires. Okay, with the flush cut end of the wires, the very tip of the round nose pliers, grab it, make a loop until it comes back. It comes right up on the first wire, then hold it tight, and we're going to make an open spiral. I have to do this a few times. It takes a little bit of practice. Take the chain nose, grab it right there at where it's finished, and bend it down. There's your second one. We're going to finish up 3 more to do this first earring. There's our 5 head pins. Now before we go any further, this is a completely optional step, but if you happen to have a block, a hammer, you can take first off the earrings, and I like to take the earring and just flatten out this back part of the curve just a tiny bit. It hardens the wire, makes it a little less prone to bending, and it adds a nice reflective feature. It just flattens it. Now this is enamel coated wire, so just be a little cautious. You don't want to have any rough edges that might peel off that enamel. Do the same thing with the other one. And we're going to do the same thing with our spirals. Again, just with the spiral portion. Okay, so now we're going to introduce our beads. I've got the beads here to make our first earring. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put each bead on and onto a wire. And then we're going to finish it up with a wrapped loop. If you don't know how to do wrapped loops, again, I will put a little link up here in the corner that will show you how to do that. For the wrap loop, you put the bead on, bring it right down to the coil. We grab it with the round nose pliers. We're going to fold it over 90 degrees. Move the pliers up to where that peaks, about a 45-degree angle. Then we're going to bring the wire over and down the other side. Going to reposition the pliers. You can see you've got that kind of a hairpin curve to it, but put the pliers in there, and we're just going to finish the loop. Bring it out so it sticks out at 90 degrees from the side. Take your chain nose pliers, grab hold of that loop, and then we're just going to do a couple of wraps, wrapping from the loop down towards the bead. I've got plenty of room here, so I'm going to get about another half turn of wraps. And we're just going to trim the wire right up against the bead using the flush part of the flush cutters on the inside. Trim that wire off. Take our chain nose pliers and just take that little piece of wire that's poking up and flatten it down. And there's our first angle. You're going to do the same thing with the rest of the rest of your head pins and the rest of your beads. for one earring, we're going to need 5 dangles, 5 jump rings, and we're going to need our ear wire. And we're going to start with the jump ring, the first dangle, which we will put onto the jump ring, and then we will hook it onto the ear wire. Then we're going to grab onto the jump ring with a couple of pairs of pliers, and we're just going to close that jump ring. Twist it a little bit, feel the ends come together, check it from the top, the front, make sure it's closed. Now we're going to grab our second jump ring. Going to get a second dangle. I'm going to hold on to that jump ring with my pliers, and we're just going to thread that through the first jump ring. And then we're going to close it up. Check it. On to the next one. One left. Jump ring, dangle, and through the last jump ring. There we go. There's your earring. Okay, just take a minute and finish up the second one, and you've got a pair of unique black finding earrings. You don't always have to have a lot of special findings in order to make some earrings, or any other jewelry for that matter. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of wire, a few beads, and a tiny bit of imagination, and a few moments out of your time. If you enjoyed this video, we would appreciate it if you would click the like button and go ahead and hit the subscribe as well. And if you ring the bell on the subscription, you will be notified of any future videos that we bring out in the days and weeks to come. We hope you stick around for a few minutes to see some of the single shots from the tutorial and also some pictures of the earrings which we've made here and the variations. Thanks for coming, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.